You're gonna get beeped. Roar!
Ah, Cel Damage, one of the pinnacle off-brand games of my childhood. This game was the oddball of all oddball games. Its genre sits on a very awkward niche of fighting, shooting, third-person, vehicular, action and sometimes racing game. Though simplified, we just go with vehicular combat, with a slick, cartoony aesthetic. Cel Damage was made by Pseudo Interactive and published by EA.
Could be worse.
I know, they only make two things, The Sims and Tragedies, but just bear with us here. Between 2001 and 2002, at a time of more experimental 3D game designs thanks to the somewhat new technology of the Xbox, PlayStation 2 and GameCube. And experimental is certainly right, as I can't think of any other game that comes close to this kind of design of a game. I mean, sure, genre-wise, you can make connections to being just a family-friendly version of Twisted Metal, but looking at the art style of this game, and it's truly something else. Though a bit of an awkward name for a title, this game maximized on its cel-shaded design in order to really ramp up the cartoony aesthetic, and it has a purpose. The game doesn't just look cartoony to market to a certain demographic of gamers, but according to the context of the game, the events of the game are simply events occurring within a TV show, airing tonight at 8 about a bunch of cartoon characters smashing each other up for the sake of entertainment. And since they're all cartoons, then the reality of death simply doesn't affect them. They can't die, so everything is permitted. And the design does really well to reflect this. Every asset has a thick black outline to its shape, the colours of each level are bright and saturated, and the physics engine of the game reflect classic cartoony reactions like cars being thrust way into the sky, freezing in place before falling to the depths, and bending cars rapidly for a sharp turn. It all works great together to really feel like you're interacting with a loony cartoon world. But this game wouldn't get anywhere with just its visual design and physics alone, because Cel Damage goes one step further and actually pushes for something that didn't really take off majorly in the gaming industry for at least another 5 years. It foreshadowed the heavier emphasis on characters and the caricature nature of their personalities. Though their individual gameplay didn't vary depending on who you chose, like newer team-based first-person shooters beyond very basic statistics, what each player did provide was a substantial personality to entertain the player with, as well as varied special weapons chained to that character. But before I get ahead of myself, let's look at the actual characters themselves. Cel Damage was quite a small, bite-sized game, starting with only 6 characters and a further 4 special guest characters you could unlock as you played. And much like the later Meet the Team series, each of the main characters got their own intro sequence to express themselves in, though there leaves a good amount to be desired. Each character gets about 20 seconds of footage. Thankfully, Cel Damage goes one step further and adds a finale clip to each of these characters as well. But more than anything, it just shows off different elements of the show with the character in a starring role, telling us a tad more of the wacky style of Cel Damage rather than more of the characters themselves, which I would argue is more interesting to know about. Not to mention, there's 4 special guest characters who make an appearance. Unfortunately, none of these 4 get any kind of cutscene screen time whatsoever. They really dropped the ball on that one. But let's move on to the actual game design and how that all works out. So as a basis, all characters come with their own unique vehicle. They only get one, and they actually come with slight stat changes that I never noticed previously. For example, Fleming's hovercraft has the highest top speed, while Cinder's little thing is best at turning and handling, I believe. Still, there are 3 game modes to play across 12 different stages. Smash Attack is all about attacking other players to get enough points, Gate Relay is your classic race through the gates in a certain path, and Flag Relay is Capture the Flag, with the flags having their own pair of legs to run away from you with. Now these game modes were pretty fun and charming in their own little ways, but really, Smash Attack is where it's at. Now each character had a minor projectile weapon to throw if they had no items. It could be skulls, shurikens, or hammers. It really didn't matter, they did minimal damage anyway. The real important weapons were the ones that you could get from item boxes. All you'd have to do is ram right through the thing and bam! Depending on the weapon, a giant robotic arm would come out of your bonnet holding said weapon. And these weapons certainly played with the gimmick. Sure, you've got your usual bomb droppings, cannons on the side of your vehicle, or a simple baseball bat, but how's about a one-hit kill axe that literally slices your victim's car in half? How about boxing gloves that come with those sparkling WOP highlights? Or my personal favourite, a hole. Just a thin black disc, throw it anywhere on the ground and suddenly you've created a makeshift hole for characters to fall into. Very cartoony. These weapons worked fantastically well with the whole style of the game to really get that crazy cartoony feel of the game, and they were a lot of fun to use, not to mention a one-of-a-kind sort of thing that's not really appeared in any other game again. Of course, these items were cool and all, but the weapons people really cared about in-game were the special ones. Marked with just an exclamation mark on the item box, this was each character's unique weapon, not unlike Mario Kart Double Dash's special item system. This gave players some pretty strong arsenal depending on who they picked. BT Bruno comes in with a giant mallet, getting smacked by that flattens you for a brief amount of time. Foulmouth whips out a spraying Tommy gun ahead of him, and Cinder equips a shredder that shreds players up if he rams into them. Now honestly, most of these items were probably a tad too strong, but if that's most of them, then maybe they're oddly balanced in a weird way. Then again, and I'm gonna go on a small tangent here, death in Cel Damage isn't majorly punished. If anything, that's entirely the point. When you die in the game, your car is gone and your characters can be seen tiny, running away from the scene. You'll get a brief look at the wreckage from the destruction site, we're talking like 1 to 2 seconds here, and then bam, you're back in the game, airdropped in a crate. The only thing you lose is the weapon you had, the location you were in, and maybe your lead, but come on, this is pretty much as fast as respawning can get. Deaths in this game aren't something to cry over, but we'll come back to this whole death thing in a bit. Anyway, while we're on this mini break, I'm going to incept your mind with something. I'm taking part in an online competition at punkanary.com. The goal is to make a comedy web series over the next couple of months, and I've been doing so with my comedy sketch group, The Biscuit Barrel. So if you want to support us there and see some comedic little shorts, then head over to punkanary.com and find The Biscuit Barrel. Do be sure to sign up and follow the show in order to make our fan numbers rise. If we do good enough, we'll be screened at the BFI and get some big-time BBC connections, so it could build a career in entertainment. Link will be down below. Thanks for listening. On with the video. So yeah, the weapons were fun to use, wacky and creative, and worked great with the cartoony aesthetic. Now let's talk levels, cause a good cartoon wouldn't be a good cartoon without a good background image to go with it. And Cel Damage keeps its charm from every angle. So, Cel Damage has 12 stages in total, spread across 4 different themes. Each theme comes with one of the special guest characters taking us to Wild West America, swampy forest land, the horrid streets of Transylvania, and space. And I'd say they work pretty dang nicely. Each obviously have their own unique layouts and such, but each also come with their own cartoony stage hazards. Wild Woolly West has a train that bombards across the stage from one tunnel to the next, which, fun fact, has the Pac-Man teleport to the other end of the stage effect. Swamp Stomp has swinging wood logs and crocs in the water, not as bad as the piranhas in the next stage Temple of Boom. Count's Castle has a sludge that pulls you in, and a drawbridge that flings you around. Plus, the next stage is called Bohemian Wrathberries. What a name. And Shooting Stars plays with gravity and elastic planets you can bounce off of. Really, these levels pushed a lot in ways of creativity and making cartoony visual gags an interactive gimmick. Not to mention, they're coloured to be bright and stylish, as one would expect. But then there's the music. The music does a fantastic job of sticking to the theme of the level and giving us some really unique yet effective sound. Bohemian Wrathberries, which you're hearing right now, has this great monstrous bass accompanying it, and switches to this classical Romanian sound, truly making it feel like you're in the depths of the vampire world. Then you've got tracks like Shooting Stars with this great techno rendition that supposedly uses audio samples from actual recordings at NASA, which is pretty rad. And of course, Wild Woolly West is a great energetic western theme tune to go with blowing up a bunch of friends. And if you couldn't tell already, Cel Damage soundtrack spreads to cover a lot of different styles. Now, if you feel I'm recalling this game a little differently to how you remember, don't worry, it's not a confusion on my part or yours. There's actually 3 different versions of this game. First came the Cel Damage for the Xbox in November of 2001, followed by the GameCube release in early 2002 of the same name. This was the original form of Cel Damage, including everything I've mentioned here thus far. I played the game on my fresh GameCube around this time, so naturally, this is how I remember it. However, when the game finally came to PlayStation 2 in December of 2002, it was given a fresh up with a new title, Cel Damage Overdrive. Now this introduced a health bar system to the game, whittling away the unfair one-hit kill weapons and building more structure to the game. The game was then forgotten to time before being picked up again for the PS3, PS4 and PS Vita in 2014, and revamped as Cel Damage HD. Xbox One also got a port in 2016. Now, Cel Damage HD upgraded the visuals of the game through UI changes, texture resolution, and your basics. They also added some new weapons and a 13th stage set to be an amalgamation of the 4 themes. Beyond that, there wasn't too much extra content. But what it did do was take and improve upon the overdrive version of the game, health bar and all. But in doing so, I and many other fans feel that sliced at the charm and wacky style Cel Damage was trying to push. Nowadays, that old axe I mentioned earlier, instead of slicing cars in half in a satisfying manner, it simply damages the cars, and if it does happen to kill, the car explodes in a rather generic fashion. Critics supposedly love it a bit more. Fans did not. Thus, Cel Damage HD was not received too fondly, and neither were the originals either, honestly, gaining mixed reviews due to minimal content, balancing issues, and an awkward genre. Pseudo Interactive actually had put in the works for a Cel Damage 2, and with it came a handful of interesting ideas, including being able to control your character from outside the vehicle. And though concept art had been created for some classic characters as well as some new ones like a Sheep King, presumably trying to get revenge for all the sheep being assaulted in the previous game, the demo was pitched to a handful of companies but ultimately fell through due to its odd subgenre, as well as not fantastic sales. Plus, game companies wanted to push more into the realistic and gritty style of games, as that was the current growing trend. Back then, Shadow the Hedgehog was still thought to be a good idea, and thus the game was scrapped. But then, hope shines through, and that 2014 remake gets people excited. If someone cares enough to redo Cel Damage 1, then perhaps Cel Damage 2 is in the works, and if that new game gets on people's minds, then the company may want to expand it more. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. Sales continued to flop and fans were disappointed, not just by the minimal content or the overdrive overhaul, but one major thing that I think could have been the make or break decision for Cel Damage as a franchise: multiplayer. Cel Damage was always made with multiplayer in mind. Get 4 buddies on a couch and have at it. In a room full of people, Cel Damage can be a super fun game to battle within. And even today, sitting on a couch playing a game together is a nice experience. But it's not the only experience anymore. Technology has improved alongside these games, and Cel Damage has not improved alongside it. What I'm talking about, of course, is online functionality. Back in 2002, online gaming simply wasn't a thing. But in 2014, when making a trailer showing off your new game, don't advertise limiting the game to couch play only as some grand thing. In reality, the kids who played this game over a decade ago don't have the free time or location space for 3 friends to play on a couch. And the kids of nowadays aren't going to want to play a combat game offline, who would? The trailer for Cel Damage HD portrays online play as being a lonely experience, but if anything, it's the opposite. Online play has you connected to any player across several boundaries. They could be in another country and they can play with you. They could be on another console and it wouldn't matter. And for those times when your friends can't play with you, online play allows you to battle against complete strangers, giving you a chance to socialize with someone new, simply through the shared interest in this one particular game. Cel Damage is fun. No one can really convince me of anything otherwise. But at most, it's got about 3 to 4 hours of content to its name as a standalone one-player game. The extension of the gameplay comes from the unexpected, not the basic AI of the game, but human players to play with. And what better way to expand into endless content options than by having online play, with all sorts of people, each with their own way of playing. Or better yet, imagine if more than 4 players could play the game in a match. There's more than 4 in every battle, but what if every single one of them was human? Now, wouldn't that be an experience? Unfortunately, many, including myself, didn't perceive this as being an expansion to the franchise. It didn't want to put in any effort to extend any more than it had to. Cel Damage HD was a simple cash grab trying to make more out of the nostalgic kids who bought the first one. And it's a real shame, because while it's very true that Cel Damage has flaws, it also has a lot of possibility. More so than many other franchises, I would argue, based on its unique gameplay style, visual approach and potential library of characters and concepts. Imagine a Cel Damage with more characters, better fleshed out with both an intro and finale sequence. Imagine a story mode attached to the game, be it a story of a competition within the show you wish to beat, or covering each character's individual arc through a series of battles. Imagine something simple like being able to emote poses or voice lines at other characters as you play. They love the sound of their own voices after all. Imagine the expansion of cartoony weapons, like an item that makes a clone of you to distract players, or a paintbrush that immediately paints a wall behind you, blocking players. How's about an eraser that you rub against an enemy to rub them away? Or a lightning bolt that jams their steering wheel, forcing them only to go backwards and forwards or keep them stuck at their turning angle. Imagine if each character had a voice line depending on what weapon they used or were being attacked with. I'm sure Dominatrix would have something to say about being rubbed out, or Fleming sounding electrocuted. What if there was a creator mode for levels, allowing you to combine all sorts of assets to make your own amalgamation? Or how's about unique game mode rules, like being restricted to one weapon only, or rolling through weapons with each kill, or having to do targeted mini-games like timing your spears to hit the targets? What if you could customize your vehicle, or your character model? And for the love of God, imagine if it was online! Now, we haven't heard about Cel Damage for a solid 3 years now, and I imagine the hopes and dreams of a Cel Damage sequel died alongside the decision to keep the remake couch-based. But I tell ya, if there's ever a way to pleasantly surprise gamers, the production of Cel Damage 2 would certainly do it for me. I won't keep my hopes up, but I will keep a hold of this GameCube game of mine for a damn long time. It was weird, and it was wacky, but it was special. And I'm glad I played it in its prime. It's as I said earlier, this game was made by EA. They're only known for making two things: The Sims and tragedies. So to them I say,
Lick my boots!
That's boots, she's saying, by the way. Not anything else. Figured I'd confirm that.
Boots!
Click on the link down below to discover the Biscuit Barrel on punkcanary.com. Otherwise, I do hope you enjoyed this video. And hey, you may have noticed that none of the sidekicks I established in the last video made an appearance in this video, or even any IRL skits at all. And that's because this video came out to be 35 minutes long before I cut out the fluff. But fear not. If you want to see the scrapped content from extra points, character interaction, story arcs, and visual gags, then you can head over to my Patreon page to find the bonus content. I've reshuffled my Patreon rewards, but those who pledged $3 or more will get to see any and all missing content of a video, soon after the final version is released. Check out my page for further details. Thanks, patrons. I only recently actually found out the details of Cel Damage HD, and even more so that there were attempts to make a Cel Damage 2. Needless to say, I was pretty excited. Until I looked into it more. Tell me your thoughts in the comments. Ever heard of Cel Damage? Would you play a sequel? And do you have any ideas of your own to contribute to the franchise? The chances of it actually returning are pretty slim, but I do love me some creativity. I've always been a speculator at heart. Here's hoping justice will be done for the franchise one day. I'll keep an eye on E3 for us. But for now, my name's been Daz. You didn't really care, and I'll see you in a bit.